Falling boulders, spike pits, tree trunks, anvils, we see them everywhere in books and media, and they're especially notable in Dungeons & Dragons games. That's right, we're talking about traps. Editor, can you insert Admiral Akbar saying, "It's a trap"? It's a trap! Thank you. But what makes a trap memorable? What makes it iconic? Today we're talking about traps, making them better and making them real. Now, in looking at traps, I like to think about four main components. Those are its purpose, the trigger, its uniqueness or creativity, and lastly, its consequence or effect. First of all, no matter where the trap is, it will always serve a purpose, and I think in order to take it from good to great, the purpose needs to be something beyond "I want to weaken my players" or "I want them to waste a spell slot." That's too easy and doesn't take into consideration the story of that trap, and beyond that, that's really just more of a consequence and not enough of a purpose. For example, there are cases of Mayan pyramids with sudden drop-offs into 30-foot wells. The ancient Egyptians built dead-end tunnels and hidden rooms to confuse grave robbers and even blocked off entire areas with giant granite blocks just to make it as difficult as possible for anyone that entered it. And probably most famously, Qin Shi Huang's tomb, the first emperor of China, is allegedly filled with tripwires, rivers of mercury, and, oh yeah, crossbows ready to fire on anyone that enters. Or so they say. Look, whether or not any of this is true, the point is traps and hazards are placed there with a goal, one singular purpose. Now in those cases, it was to protect what was within, the gold and artifacts left behind for the deceased, because as it turns out, ancient people loved money just as much as we do. Which leads me to the trigger. Now the trigger is important, especially in D&D. If you want it to be fair, it needs to be clear, concise, and specific. A well-designed trigger should make the players think we should have seen that coming rather than that was unfair. For example, breaking a tripwire because your passive perception didn't pick it up and you didn't investigate. Now, there's a few different types of triggers, like a lot actually. But to give you a few, the trigger can be activated physically, like a pressure plate on the floor.
Until we reach 3. I may have put my foot on the bridge. Didn't realize that's where it technically started.
Or a tripwire snapping. They can be magical triggers like a seal or a specific word. They can be environmental like the changing of temperature or the passing of time. They can be emotionally triggered, say something like,
"Only a person who wanted to find the stone, find it, but not use it, would be able to get it."
Or the way a cursed treasure might activate when someone takes from the plunder. You can have living statues or guardian spirits or animals like oozes and molds that are set off by line of sight or being alerted. There's motion detection or sound detection. There's just so many things that can be the trigger for your trap, and when you lay it out like that, you really start to realize how much room there is for you to get creative. Which is a great segue, thank you me. Number 3 is creativity. A trap shouldn't just have a purpose, it should look the part too. What I mean is that it should reflect the person that put it there. Now when designing traps, think about how they fit into the story and the setting. Ask yourself, what would the person or culture who built this trap have done to achieve their goal? If the trap has been placed in an ancient prison, well, there might be traps to keep people from opening the front door, and probably lots of traps to make sure that nothing gets out. So there might be traps that seal doors shut or flood escape routes or alert magic guardians if certain conditions are met. To juxtapose that, what about barbarian chieftain traps? Well, those might be purely brute force, like falling logs or pressure plates that launch spears or cages that drop from the ceiling. All of that is to say that when the design of a trap reflects the personality, culture, or especially the resources of its creator, it feels like an extension of the world and not just a game mechanic. But let's face it, not all of us are wordsmiths. You might have this killer idea for a trap, pun intended, but you find yourself staring at the screen thinking, how do I describe this without sounding like something out of a generic dungeon crawl? Well, that's where a tool like Describe can take your traps from meh to magnificent. Imagine when your players trigger a pressure plate, instead of just saying a dart shoots out at you from a statue, you can say a sharp thwip announces the presence of the dart as it flies from the statue's mouth with incredible speed. Though clearly ancient, the dilapidated trap functions perfectly, unfortunately for you. And it's got this cool sound effect ready for you right there, right? Tell me your players wouldn't feel that. And with Describe, you can find pre-written boxed text for traps, treasures, and everything in between, giving you immersive descriptions that make your world feel alive without having to spend hours drafting them yourself. And it's not just for traps, you can use it for character introductions and settings and magical effects. You can find music, you name it, and Describe has it. And lastly, the consequences or the effects. Now, there are 3 types of consequences that you might have in your traps. There's immediate, long-lasting, and narrative. Each of these can add depth to your gameplay and make the trap feel more integrated into your world and, obviously, more importantly, your story. Now, immediate consequences are those gotcha moments. That's the dart that hits the player that deals the damage, the boulder that falls and crushes the bridge, or the cage that slams down and traps the rogue, or whatever. Immediate consequences are the easiest to implement, but they can sometimes feel shallow if they don't lead to something more interesting. For example, instead of a spike trap that, deals 2d10 piercing damage, imagine spikes coated in a poison, and now that rogue is out of commission or is suffering some sort of long-lasting effect for the next few rounds, and the party has to scramble to keep them safe while continuing their exploration. Then there's long-lasting consequences, and those are the ones that stick with the party, creating tension or altering the gameplay later on down the road. A magical rune that triggers a curse or weakens the party's strength until they find a way to lift it, or stepping into an ancient glyph that ignites a series of cascading failures throughout the rest of the dungeon. These traps that have these long-lasting consequences force players to think in the long term, like how will they adapt to a cursed party member? Can they complete their mission while their healer is blind? These challenges can create really memorable moments that linger long after the trap itself has been sprung. And then lastly, there's your narrative consequences, and these are my favorite. Narrative consequences tie the trap into the story in a meaningful way, like maybe triggering a trap that releases an ancient demon that becomes the big baddie, or a tripwire makes the party fall down a chute, but they see a crazy mosaic that tells the story of this elder god that's been sealed up. And now the trap didn't just hurt them, it immersed them deeper into the story. So when you're designing traps, think about their purpose, make sure they have a clear and fair trigger, make them creative, fit your world and especially the resources of the people who made the trap, and then consider their consequences, whether they're immediate, long-lasting, or a narrative consequences, or all of them. Traps don't have to just be obstacles for your players to overcome. They can be opportunities to deepen your world building, add tension, and create some really unforgettable moments. Anyways, I hope this video helped. Let me know in the comments what you do differently when thinking about your traps. If you're sticking around this far, it's probably because you love my little friend Tobias. Well, he's gone missing in the Feywild, and I, unfortunately, still need your help. The last we checked, he's gone into this crazy castle, and you have come together to do all kinds of insane things. Undying Shenanigans 4833 is going in stealthy after hearing absolutely nothing, so make a stealth check or a sleight of hand for me. And then there's Greg McNeish, not sure how to pronounce your name, but you wrote, "As a bard, I draw inspiration from Black Bart. I will use wit and charm to enter the castle. Hail to thee, O castle upon hill, I come as a friend seeking aid, if you will. Pray may I enter, or perhaps have a chat, as I search for Tobias, our beloved displacer cat." Make a performance check for me. Now, as you enter the castle, you see this black obsidian obelisk in the center of the main hall. Its surface shimmers faintly as though it has this dark energy pulsing within it, and around the base of the obelisk, there's these faint runes that are glowing, shifting colors like embers. Everything in this room seems to be made of obsidian, and the room itself is silent, save for the faint hum of magic emanating from that structure. Suddenly, there's a voice that echoes in your mind, a deep, resonant tone that chills your soul. Who dares disturb the sanctum of the Obsidian King? Declare your purpose or face the consequences. What do you do? Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Forge on, my friends, and I'll see you next time, adventurers.